Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk about the for loop using the range function. So the for loop is a little bit different than the while loop. In the while loop, if you recall, we did not have to know exactly how many times the loop was going to iterate, or we could leave it up to the user to decide to continue using the loop or not. However, in the for loop you have a set number of iterations that will happen, and that's where the range function comes in. You set up those iterations using the range function. So we're going to talk about that for a little bit. So the basic setup, again, you're going to have a control variable here, and it's going to iterate through the range, whatever you set that up to be. So the way you set it up is you use your keyword for, and then your control variable can be whatever. I use X a lot just because it's simple. Sometimes if I need that variable inside the loop, I'll name it something a little bit more meaningful. But if it's just going to bounce over all of the items in the range, then I really don't care what it's named, so I use something quick and easy. Just usually a simple letter, usually X. So for X in range. So here when we set up our range, if you look at the screen here, we can have a stop point only, which automatically starts at 0 and counts by ones up to the stop point. Or we could have the start and the stop, which gives us this, we give the range the starting point and the stopping point. Or we can give it the start, the stop, and the step. So in the first two examples, if we just put the stop, or if we put the start and the stop, it automatically counts up by 1. However, if we put a step in there, we can make it count by 2s or 4s, 3s, 5s, 10s, whatever we want it to. So we're going to do a quick example of all of those. Now keep in mind, this range function does not include the stop limit. So if you say for X in range 10, it's going to go 0 through 9 because it starts at 0. However, if you do range 1 through 10, it's only going to go 1 through 9. So it's never going to do that 10th one because that's the stop limit, and the stop limit is not included in the range function. So we're just going to do a stop point here. So for X in range 10, we're simply just going to print X. So X is going to take on each numerical value starting at 0 going up to 10, and then we're going to print that out. But remember, 10 will not be printed because it does not include the stop limit. So we're going to run this. I'm going to save it. I'm just going to call it 4. So if you look over here, 0 through 9 is what we get printed out, because again it does not include the stop limit, which is 10, and it starts at 0 and goes up by 1 each time the loop iterates. So X took on 0 the first time through the loop, so it printed 0. The second time through the loop, X took on 1 because it incremented by 1 because that's the default and we didn't set the step value. And it continued to go up by 1 each time, and we continued to print X out. So this time we're going to come back over to our program, and we're going to start at 10 but stop at 21 because I want it to print 20 this time. So I'm going to stop at 1 above where I want it to actually stop because the stop value is not included. So again, it's just going to print X. I'm going to save it again. So here we start at 10 and go all the way to 20 because I gave it a start and a stop, and the start was 10, the stop was 21. Again, stop point is not included. So we got 10 through 20. Now we're going to do 10 through 50, or actually let's do 100. But we're going to add a step value of 10. So it's going to increase by 10 each time. And actually let's do this 101. so that, or let's do 110, so that 100 will be included. So we'll run it, and I'm doing that by hitting F5, by the way. That's the shortcut key to run the module. So we get 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, because it counts up by 10 starting at 10. So 10 plus 10 is 20, 20 plus 10 is 30, so on and so forth. And X takes on each one of those values every time the loop iterates. So that's the basic of using the range function with the for loop. Now the range function can count backwards. So if we were to start at 20, end at 9, or 10, either one, whatever, and we count by -1, because our set value can be negative, now we count backwards. So we hit F5, we save it, and now we count down from 20 to 10, but 10 is not included, so we stop at 11. So the range function can go up or down depending on whether your step value is positive or negative. So now we're going to use this to do just a quick sample program. So we're going to say for X in range 11, because I want it to do this for numbers 1 through 10. So for X in range 11, we're going to say the squared value equals X times X. And then we're going to print out X. We're going to tab over, and then we're going to print the squared value out. So I'm going to go up here just above this, and I'm going to print out number tab squared, just to make this look like a nice clean chart. Okay, so, oh, and I need to close out my print function. Okay, so this up here is just going to print the word number. It's going to tab over and print the word squared. Then it's going to have a line, and then this little chart that this for loop is going to run through. So you see the number squared, 0 squared is 0, 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, so on and so forth, all the way through 10. And I actually should have started this at 1, because generally you don't square 0. But at any rate, you can kind of see the math happens because X takes on the next value each time we iterate through the loop. It squares it, and then it prints out X, and then it prints out the squared value. And we've got a nice little chart going on here. So we can also, while we're using this for loop, we can take this and accumulate our totals, so we can add up totals throughout a time period or whatever the case may be. So we are going to redo this, and we're going to ask the user for, over the course of, let's say, 5 days, we're going to ask them to enter a number of fish that they caught for that day. And then we're going to give them the total number of fish that they caught over that 5-day period. So we need to create our accumulator variable, and you can, I call mine total, and set that equal to 0. So now for inside my loop, I'm going to ask the user to enter how many fish they caught for each of the 5 days. So fish equals integer input, enter the number of fish caught on day. Now the input, you can't use the comma as separators because it only takes you can only put in one string in the input. It won't take more than one, and when you use the comma, it takes those two strings as two different things. So we can concatenate using the plus sign to add in multiple strings into one big string so that the input function will take them. So the day number is going to be x plus 1 because remember x starts at 0, goes to 4, but we want days 1 through 5. So we have to turn them into a string, so we use the str function. So string str of x plus 1. And then I'm going to just concatenate in a colon so that, or excuse me, a colon and a space. And then we're going to close out our entire input function. So that's going to get them to enter the number of fish caught, and then it's going to give them the day number. So it's going to say day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. So each time they enter in these number of fish, we are going to add that to our total. So our total is going to equal our total plus fish. Now an easier way to do that line of code right there is to use the, some shortcut math. And what we can do is we can say total plus equals fish. So this plus equals does the same thing as saying total equals total plus fish. It adds fish to the total and then stores it right back in the variable total. You can write it either way. It'll work both ways. This is just kind of a shorthand way to write it. So after it's all said and done with and we get the total number of fish that they collected, we're going to tell them how many fish they caught. So we're going to print after 5 days you caught use our total variable and fish. So this is going to tell them after 5 days you caught, and then whatever their total is from all the math that happens inside this for loop, it's going to print that total out, and then it's going to tell them that that's how many fish they caught after 5 days. So we're going to hit F5. We're going to save this again. How many fish caught? Enter the number of fish caught on day 1. And we'll say that we caught 3. On day 2 we caught 2. Day 3 we got lucky and caught like 8 of them. Day 4 we only caught 1, and then day 5 we caught 6. So after 5 days you caught 20 fish. So it added up 3 plus 2 plus 8 plus 1 plus 6. That comes out to 20 fish. So that's the basics for the for loop. Later on this week I may go into a little bit more detail on the for loops and the while loops and stuff. So just keep a lookout.